Good afternoon, Facebook. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And good afternoon to you. I am Tyra Watson, and I am coming to you all from the Southwest Grief Corner, coming to you all from 7901 South Kaminsky, Chicago, 60652. Again, this is Tyra Watson, the Aftercare Director, coming to you guys today for the Southwest Grief Corner. We're located at 7901 South Kaminsky. That is Chicago, 60652. Our telephone number here is 773-424-3151. Again, our telephone number here is 773-424-3151. You can also visit our website. Our website is www.southwestfuneralandcremation.com. Again, our website is www.southwestfuneralandcremation.com. We have been talking about the 5 stages of grief in the Grief Corner this last month. And today we are moving right into the last stage, and we are closing out with acceptance. Acceptance being the part of the grief stages that says, at this point, I'm moving forward. We all pretty much know what it means to accept things, but acceptance, when we think about it, should be that we think about how we can accept things or about how we do not accept things. On the primary surface of that, how do we accept things? Well, I know that over the last few weeks, as I've talked to you guys about the stages of grief, we started with denial. And denial, I said that your job in that phase, the grief work goal, is to accept your loss. And now here we get to the end of the 5 stages of grief, which is acceptance. So the front, or the beginning of where grief starts, where we may be in denial, connects to the very end of where grief should end as far as marked stages, which is acceptance. So from the time I find out that there is going to be a change, from the time that I find out that there is loss, it is going to be my goal from the beginning to the end to eventually come to a point of acceptance. Now, some people have suffered loss with regards to a loved one, and what ended up happening is they are now, going on with their life. Maybe they moved to a new city. Maybe they started a new job. Maybe they purchased them a new home. Maybe they got a new apartment. All the same. But what happened for these types of individuals, they went through the suffering, they went through the pain, they went through the loss, they went through all of the things possibly in the stages of grief that you can feel, or maybe they only experienced 1 or 2 things, and now, regardless of what people may say or think, this is 3 years later, or it's 5 years later, maybe 10 or 15 years later, and maybe they're getting some ridicule. Maybe you're a person that is in the acceptance of a stage of grief, and you're getting ridicule. We know what acceptance is, which is basically agreeing, coming to terms with what is the new norm. But don't let people make you feel guilty about the fact that after your loss, you get to a place where you can continue to live your life. I talked to you guys in bargaining about how you should, in bargaining, understand that you have to release your loved one, and in bargaining that you have to release yourself. So if you are in bargaining, or you were bargaining a couple weeks ago when I talked about that, and then now we get here, I said you can't bargain for long because there's no permanent solution there. So if there's no permanent solution when I bargain, then what do? You have to come to a place where you can release your loved one and you release yourself. So when I talk about acceptance, when I release myself, then I'm releasing myself to be able to go back out into the world, but it's my new world. It's not the same world because now I don't have that job. Now I don't have that house. Now I don't have that relationship. Now I don't have my loved one here. So this is my new norm. But when I come to a place of acceptance, I'm here now because I have got over my anger. I've gotten over the hurt. I've gotten over the pain. And even if I have not gotten over it, I am at a place where I can accept the loss and continue to move on with my life. This is necessary. Why? Because you are still living. If you are a spouse and you lost your mate, and you have children, why do you have to go ahead and move forward? Because your children still need you. Some people say, well, I just don't know what I'm going to do. Well, you have to keep going. Now, I will say this, because we've talked about this plenty over these last few weeks, that there is no particular time to be in any particular state. Some of you may have lost someone or lost a thing 2 years ago, and you're still in the place of trying to even come to terms with the fact that this doesn't exist anymore. There have been some structures, say buildings here in Chicago, that have been closed down 10, 20 years, and you still have people that cannot let it go. Now, if they go sit outside that building where that place used to be, and this is what they do every day or whatever, that's weird, okay? That's not accepting. That's weird behavior. At the same time, you have not accepted it is also what that is. But for someone who has accepted it, say in an instance like that, well, here goes the conversation. I talk about that place because I had a lot of good memories in that place. However, I have new places that I go. However, I have new friendships. However, I have new relationship. So it is okay to come to grips. And that is your goal. Ultimately, because we talked about in depression, how if you do not address it and you're masking it by using crutches such as substances as well as drug, maybe prescription drugs. We talked about how those things can form addictions because addictions help to change or modify our mood. We talked about the fact that depression is a mood disorder. So if eventually I don't deal with accepting these things, then I'm stuck depressed. And because I can't come to a healthy place of acceptance, then I wind up doing things that are not healthy, like say going to sit outside the building that you had so many great memories at that's been closed for 10 or 15 years. And now, that's weird. Like you have to find something new. So please understand, if you have lost someone, because there is no set time to go through your grief work, because there is no set time for you to experience any one particular stage. There is nothing guaranteeing that you will experience each stage. But because there is no set time, if you lost your loved one 2 years ago and you're still having problems accepting the loss, then guess what? That's just where you are. And there's no rush to get you to come to acceptance and move on with your life. Don't feel like that. And don't let people make you feel like you just need to go and carry on. But for those of you who have made it through your grief work, who have made it through the grief stages, for those of you who have cried, for those of you who have talked themselves till you were blue in the face, or maybe you kept it to yourself and maybe you've spent the years or the months or the weeks that were necessary to spend dealing with the things that you were feeling in regard to your loss, but you feel better. Because some people, I say you need to talk to someone, and definitely for sure if you're in a depressive state or you have depressive disorder, if you are self-medicating, if you are taking prescription drugs for any type of psychosis or mental health issue or chemical imbalance that has to do with our neurological and hormonal systems, you need to be talking to someone. But some people can go through grief and they can deal with it inside. They can deal with it healthy. And then next time you see them, they're talking about the fact that they're in a better place. Next time you talk to them, they're sharing with you how they've been able now to accept their loss and move on. Maybe they moved to, a new place or whatever it was, but it's not to say, like we spoke about in bargaining, where you release yourself and you also release your loved one. So it's not to say that they're no longer thinking about their loved one. It's not to say that they're no longer celebrating their loved one in the way that they do, but it's just they've been able to come back to a point of functionality in society despite their losses. And you are not in a place to make someone feel guilty who may be moving on and accepting the loss. Let's give an example. Let's say the woman did lose her husband, or let's say the man did lose his wife. This is 5 years later. They shared that marriage. They loved each other very much. They did everything that they could for one another up until the point of death. And even after death, they made sure that they took care of their loved one. They took care of their husband. They took care of their wife. They took care of their child. But when you're talking about the spouse, so they took care of them to the point of funeralizing them, or making sure that final disposition through private services of cremation were handled. And they gave them an amazing service. And now this is 5 years later. Trust me, it hurt, and they went through what they needed to. But now that they have a new relationship, maybe now they are engaged again. Celebrate that for that person. Celebrate them, uplift them, promote them to continue going forward. Because whether they may or may not share with you is that every time his or her birthday comes around, they still get sad. Maybe they may or may not share with you that they still go visit that grave. Maybe they may or may not share with you that they still call and check on, that side of the family, or do things maybe for the mother-in-law or the father-in-law. Why? Because they accepted the loss. And yes, they've moved on. But the way that they have accepted it is that they still do things that make them feel better about that attachment. So please do not beat people up if they have moved forward and accepted their loss and started living their life again. And the same is true for those who have not accepted their loss. If you have not come to a place of acceptance with your loss, that is okay. Because through anger, through bargaining, through denial, through depression, we've talked about how these things don't have a set time. And so since we know they don't have a set time, if you're not at the place of accepting the loss yet, take your time. My most important point to those who have not accepted their loss yet is what I've been talking about, which is make sure that you're getting it out constructively, not destructively, because we do not want those feelings that will bury us or swallow us inside to then resume themselves or show themselves in a manner that's going to be unhealthy for us, or in a manner that's going to be destructive for us. Now, you don't have to, like I mentioned, for the person that maybe was able to deal and internalize their grief, but they did it still through a healthy manner. And next time you saw them, they were at acceptance, and you're like, wow, so she didn't even grieve for him, or he didn't even, you're not. Yeah, but everybody does things their own way. Remember, grief is highly individual. And because grief is individual, what's good for the gander may not be good for the goose. And so it's not our position to judge, but our position to help and support those who are grieving. And if you are grieving, you have to understand this is your grief process. This is your mourning period, and you have to go through it in your way. So if you're not at a place of acceptance yet, don't feel like I'm rushing you. Over the last 5 weeks, today being 5, we've spoken about the stages of grief. I've talked about them in 5 weeks, but it doesn't take 5 weeks to actually go through them. Okay, so please remember that. And as I'm giving you guys the information and sharing with you and hopefully helping you all, it's not as accelerated as I'm speaking of it in those terms. So an acceptance period. One young lady says it's true because her mom left in 1989, then her dad in 2005, then her brother in 2009, and she's still grieving. So you're talking from 1989 to 2020 grief. But let me say this to you. I also said you can choose how to accept or not accept. Some people have placed themselves in a position where they will not accept it. Right now, what we're looking at in society, right now we have 2 crises going on. We have a pandemic and we also have a racial crisis. The racial crises, if you really want to look at the time span, we're talking about 19 till about 2020. Again, we're talking about what we accept and what we don't accept. This young lady has been in a grieved state since 1989. The country, a culture, has been in a grieved state since 1619 approximately. And this is 2020. So now, even as we see what's going on in the world, we're looking at what people will not accept. And it's the same thing like in death. If someone killed my son and I don't have justice for him, then yes, I may not ever come to a place of acceptance. My son is gone maybe, and I'm dealing with, and I've been dealing with everything that I'm feeling, but can I ever come to a place to accept his death, to accept the death of my daughter, to accept? Yeah, sometimes you may not ever come to a place of acceptance. Because what did we also say? We said that everybody doesn't experience every stage. So because everybody doesn't experience every stage, you will have some people that will never come to a place of accepting their loss. If that happens to you, please know that, again, we need to talk to someone if our behaviors become destructive. So if you're in a place where you've not been able to come to terms with the loss, and it has been some time, understand that you could still be in a grieved state. And people have been living in a grieved state. This is why people have some, not all, and I don't condone it, but some people, I don't condone it, but I understand it. People have been without food or limited resources for a long time. People have struggled for a long time. In the African and American culture, you'll have some that will gladly tell you they never got their 40 acres and a mule. It never happened. So you have people that have been angry that long, and it's an anger that's because of suppression. It's an anger. You tell me that even though I've done my time, I've paid my debt to society, if I've been locked up and now I come back out into society and it wasn't even, say, a violent crime, and I can't even vote or I can't get a job, and now even though my debt has been paid, I can't come back out into society and be functional again because you're still holding it over my head. People are mad. People are angry. People are depressed. So yeah, they go out, and an opportunity came for people to do some things and get some things that they have not had the availability to, or maybe that they did not have the resource for. But what you're looking at is what people won't accept. An opportunity came and they said, I'm not going to accept sitting in this house, not having some of the things that I need, and I can go out and get it. Again, the woman can say, my son was killed. I don't have justice for him. I can't accept his death, and I'm not going to let you all rest until I get justice. The chances are no justice, no peace. So while people are saying we're not going to accept anything, just anything, you're not just going to tell me anything, you're not just going to do me any kind of way, I refuse to accept that any longer. Then you have the other side, on the authority side, that has now the obligation, the position, or choice to say what they will and won't accept. So when we talk about acceptance, acceptance is huge. So when we're looking at what's going to happen as a result of this pandemic, what's going to happen as a result of this racial crisis that we are now facing dually. Okay, because I do want you all to know, and please do not get it twisted, that even now, Chicago, here in Illinois, we've had an additional 5,800,000 deaths over the last month or so. So currently, we're talking about 5,800 people who have died from COVID in Illinois. Now, I checked the other stats, but since I'm in Illinois, then I just want to make sure that I push it out to the people here in Illinois. Please check the stats for your state or contact me directly and I'll get it for you. But over 125,000 cases of COVID. This is current. Now, in the last 24 hours, 1,600 new COVID cases. Last 24 hours, 1,600 new COVID cases. 113 new deaths in the last 24 hours. So while the racial crises and the looting, the protests, and all of those things have been taking place, there is still yet COVID. So as a funeral home, we are still concerned about protecting your interests as a community resource. And so between these two things, what is going to be the new norm? What are we going to come to accept? Well, we may have to continue to accept that we're going to be wearing masks. We may have to continue to accept that we're going to have to maintain social distancing. We may have to continue to accept that we may be, even though things are open, if you are cognitive of the COVID side of things, you may accept that you actually still need to stay home. But then you have some that will say they're not going to accept it. They're going to come out now. They're going to come out with the mask. They're going to come out and do and go where they want to go because Chicago is in phase 3. So things have opened. So people are they've accepted that they have been sat down long enough and they're going to move. So when we talk about acceptance in death, in grief, our world is in a grieved state right now. So when we talk about the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Why is it relative to everything? Because the world is in a grieved state. So even if you're not suffering because of the death of your loved one, please, please, please go back through. You can go through the timeline. All the videos are available. Go back through and look at the 5 stages of grief and find out where you are. It is nothing wrong with restructuring yourself. It is nothing wrong with moving past the loss of your loved one. You should, because you still have to live your life. You need to live a healthy life. You need to live a life that allows you to leave a mark. You need to live a productive life. And so continue to live your life. But know that no one should make you feel guilty if you are in acceptance. If you had a loss and you've changed your whole life, city and all, no one should make you feel guilty, and do not let them. And if you have not come to a place of acceptance for those who you have lost, that's okay. Identify where you are and deal with those feelings. And eventually you will work your way through to being able to come to a new norm. So when we look at the bigger picture about the new norms here, the new norm, again, we're waiting to see what it's going to be. Some people will accept it and some people won't. But just understand that as it pertains to your losses and death, eventually, again, it don't know how long it may take, but eventually, if you can come to a place of acceptance, enjoy being there. You're not releasing your loved one from your love. You're only releasing yourself to continue to be able to live your life. Because when the books are closed on your life, you want to make sure that you have lived your best and your fullest life, despite the losses, despite the downfalls, despite the hurts, despite the pain, despite the sadness, despite ugliness, despite dark days, still live your best life. As I close today, I point you all to the website southwestfuneralcremation.com. Again, I point you to our website for additional resources, www.southwestfuneralcremation.com. It's been a long week. All the resources that I make available to you are under grief support. I have been the last hour pricing moving companies. I'm trying to work out some deal with moving companies. That being said, in the next day or so, please look for, if you need a moving company as a result of your loss or a result of you coming into acceptance and needing to change your environment because you're starting anew. God bless you and well wishes on your new journey as you've come into acceptance. And if you need a moving company, then I am doing the legwork for you right now to find moving companies. I have one on the north side right now that's bottom lining with a minimum of $290 for a moving price, and I'm trying to get 2 more. So we'll have at least 3 moving companies that we can put you in the hands of that will be able to help you make the move, whether it's moving yourself as a result, or whether it is the fact that maybe you need to move out that house that was left behind from your loved one. As well, you have the Salvation Army there. And I just spoke about the COVID cases. Again, we have 1,600 new cases here in the last 24 hours reported in Chicago. So what do I need you guys to do? I remind you also of the other resource that I added a couple weeks ago, U.S. COVID plasma. If you have recovered, we have 78,000 people in Chicago. 78,000 people in Chicago who have recovered from COVID. If you have recovered from COVID, how can you be a help to someone else? How can you be a resource to someone else? We're seeing in society right now, people are helping people. So how can you as a person be instrumental in helping someone as it regards COVID? 78,000 people have recovered. Please go to uscovidplasma.com. That is under our grief resources too. And set up an appointment. Donate your plasma. Help them find a cure. Okay, so again, looking for moving companies. Those resources will be available online for you guys under grief support. And again, be well. Our next Zoom for our grief support group will be next Thursday. Our next Zoom is next Thursday for grief support, and that's going to be our group setting. We will do it via Zoom because, like I said, it's still not safe. CDC has not released us. Our number will change here once the CDC changes it. So for anybody who has that question, is any funeral homes that are keeping compliant will change their rules when the CDC gives us permission to. So I just want to say God bless you guys. God keep you all. Next week when we do the Zoom, I won't be on Friday since we will do the Zoom grief support on Thursday. We have 2 amazing counselors joining us. There will be Mansoura Brotnax. She's coming in from Atlanta. She is well over 20 years experience in behavioral health, occupational health, counseling, education as well. She's a teacher of clinical sciences in the university system. And then we also have licensed professional counselor Erin Graham. Erin Graham is a specialist in crises and trauma counseling. She too will be joining us. She's right here in Chicago by way of Memphis, Tennessee. So she's an amazing person, a wonderful woman, and an excellent professional. Mansoura and Erin will be facilitating. Of course, I'll be there too, but Mansoura and Erin will be facilitating our next grief support group on next Thursday, June 11th, 7 p.m. You can access that Zoom code through our website. So www.southwest Funeralandcremation.com. Again, a blessing, guys. You all be well. You all are in my prayers. Be safe, be careful, and we will see you next Thursday on the Zoom. If you have any questions, call me here at the office, 773-424-3151, and my cell is 915-539-0779. Thank you and God bless.